Hi there. I'm so excited to welcome you to the Arthritis Life podcast, where we share arthritis life stories and tips for thriving with autoimmune arthritis. My name is Cheryl Crow, and I am passionate about helping people navigate real life with arthritis beyond joint pain. I've been living with rheumatoid arthritis for 20 years, and I'm also a mom, occupational therapist, video creator, support group leader, and I created the Room to Thrive self-management program. I am so excited to help you live a more empowered life with arthritis. We're going to cover everything from kitchen life hacks to navigating the healthcare system to coping with friends who just don't get it. Seriously, no topic is going to be off limits on this podcast. My interviewees and I share our honest stories of how chronic illness affects our lives. This includes discussions about mental health, sex, shame, pregnancy, body image, advocacy, self-acceptance, and so much more. You'll hear stories from all ends of the spectrum, from a person who's living in medicated remission from psoriatic arthritis to somebody living with severe mobility restrictions and severe pain from rheumatoid arthritis. You'll hear how people manage their conditions in different ways, like medications, mindfulness, movement, social support, work accommodations, and so much more. You'll also hear from rheumatology experts who just get it. We'll dive deep into the science behind chronic pain and what's the latest evidence for lifestyle changes that can help you thrive with arthritis, including exercise, sleep, nutrition, stress reduction, and more. This is your chance to sit down and chat with a friend who's been there. Ready to figure out how to manage your arthritis life? Let's get started.
Welcome to Rheumer Has It, the podcast that busts myths, highlights evidence, and inspires hope for living better with rheumatic disease.
Through plain language interviews with experts, we offer actual knowledge so you can thrive today.
My name is Eileen.
And my name is Cheryl.
Join us as we bust myths and spotlight evidence, and today with our own personal experience.
Yeah. Yay. So today is going to be a little different than our typical episodes. We're going to be sharing about the topic of romantic relationships and the impact of arthritis or chronic illness on our romantic relationships. And this is a little different than our usual episodes because we're not interviewing an expert or anything, but we know it's a really hot topic in the arthritis community. It's a topic that's come up on social media for both of us and in our support groups, and we're going to tackle it today and sprinkle in a few pieces of research here and there. And just to give a quick status on from where I'm coming from, I've been married now I'm in my mid-40s, and I've been married now for 14 years, but I had my diagnosis for 6 years before meeting my husband. So I had some experience either being single or dating in that time as well. But I know a lot has changed since then. But yeah, Eileen, you go ahead and let us know where you're coming from in this conversation.
Yeah, one of the reasons or things I envisioned with this podcast was juicy topics within the rheumatic disease community. And sometimes those experts are the people with the lived experience. So that's why Cheryl and I are the experts today. We're talking about our lived experience with relationships. And because this is a juicy hot topic in the community, I have noticed it in the support groups online, both in person, and also any articles I have ever written. Dating was always really popular. Got a lot of engagement, shares, views, likes, all of that. So we know that it is a topic that many people want to hear about. And that is why we're going to discuss it. And so Cheryl explained her experience of being married, where I am 40 years old and single in a relationship, but I'm not married, dating for a few months, going well, thankfully. But, I have 12 years of being diagnosed, and I have been in relationships and dated and taken time off where I didn't want to date anymore. And so we come from different perspectives here, but there is no, you don't just wake up one day when you're 18 and meet the love of your life and live a happy married life. It would be nice if that was like that, like the movies, you kind of say, but
Yeah.
no. So yeah. we're going to talk about dating with a chronic illness, particularly rheumatic disease, and what it is kind of about living with that disease that maybe do we want to tell our partner or the person we're talking to about it, and maybe kind of reasons why we're not, want to disclose it, or reasons why we do disclose it. For myself, when I was diagnosed, I had a relationship end because he ended up not being the most empathetic person, and I felt that wasn't gonna work for me, it wasn't for him, and, happy that ended, actually. However, when I met people and ventured out into dating, I've always been very open with it right away. And I think that comes down to I don't want my time wasted. I don't think anybody does, and I think, like, I don't see it as a huge flaw with me, it is a thing I live with. It is part of me, but it is not my whole identity. I want to be open and honest in a relationship, and I am going to disclose it quite early, mainly also because when they ask me, "What do you do for work?" Well, I'm a professional patient advocate, and this is what I do. I'll be like, "I work for a nonprofit organization, blah, 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 blah." And they'll be like, "Well, how did you get into that?" I'm like, I can't avoid it. Literally
Right.
can't avoid it. So I'm very open about it, and it really depends on the response of that individual when I first tell them. I have had some interesting responses of being, unmatched right away, ghosted. Maybe it's not like a super quick ghost or unmatched. Sometimes it's a slow ghost where, they have like conversation, but it's like ends really quick after. There's very little effort after. They can say things either super inappropriate. I've had men ask me straight off the bat after I disclose it that, they're like, how does it affect sex? Or say really rude things like, I guess no hand jobs from you.
Oh
Right?
my
Is
gosh.
It
Wow.
is really interesting, and then I've even had times where dudes have shamed me because I haven't cured my disease, so you never know how you're going to get a response from somebody, and I think that the way that they respond to you says so much about how that person is gonna treat you for the whole entire relationship, whether that lasts a couple messages or maybe get married. So, yeah, definitely listen to how somebody responds to you when you say that you have a chronic illness. Cheryl, do you want
Wow.
to add anything there?
No, I mean, it's wild the things people will say. And yeah, my experience, I think the way we structure this is we're going to first start talking about dating and then go more into the actual like relationship. But so there were 6 years between my diagnosis and then when I met my now husband, and I was in a series, I'm like what they call a serial monogamist. So I really like to be in a relationship, but I just hadn't found quite the right person until 2009 with my husband. And I was in a relationship at the time I was diagnosed in 2003. And I'm very lucky. My ex he was studying a science related field, and he was very science oriented and kind of understood immediately about the importance of the medications, and was very supportive. So very lucky for that. Then, eventually dated someone else. And it's funny because I didn't remember a lot of this stuff, but I was going back through my old records and getting ready to write my book, my kind of memoir slash self-help book that I'm structuring right now. And I forgot that one of my exes, again, I have mostly only good things to say, but there were some things that I see in a different light now. So I always joke that unsolicited advice with some people can be like a love language. I think he was genuinely trying to help. But I was looking through the old emails and realized he was realizing in his case, he wasn't as scientifically minded as the previous one. And he was kind of trying to pressure me to do like all these natural things, which I totally forgot that he had done. And, I'm glad that I continue taking my medication because it's what my body has needed. But anyway, my current husband, that sounds weird to say. The person I ended up with eventually, I think what
the thing that when we were dating at that time, I had a more simplistic view, even with the people I was dating before and then my husband. At that point, I was basically in medicated remission. So I was taking it in remission for a long time. And so in my head, I would tell them if the question is, do you disclose or not? I would explain that I had RA, but I had this very simplistic idea that I have this lifelong chronic condition, but I'm on this new cutting edge treatment and I'm doing great. I conquered it, quote unquote. You know what I mean? In my head, I was like, I kind of figured it out. And so I did. And then when I eventually had my flare ups with my husband, I was almost like I felt like I had baited and switched him accidentally because I was like, well, now my illness is way more complicated than I realized. So that's something that I've mentioned that before in the support groups. And that's resonated with a few people who've also felt that way. So I think it's really what I think it's important if you're disclosing to maybe just, and he didn't feel that way, by the way. He was just like, this is what it is. But he wasn't like, you baited and switched me. But it was like, I think we both thought, oh, well, it was like this problem that we solved. Like, I'm just going to take the same medicine the rest of my life, not realizing that the meds could wear off. So I think it's important to explain to somebody that it's an up and down illness, that you might be in a good
Yep.
period now, but it might get worse later.
Yeah, I would definitely also, now that I think of it, hearing you speak, you start a new relationship and you meet somebody new, you have to realize we're masking our symptoms while we're there with them because we don't want them to see it right away. We want them to see us and we just want to have a good time. So, our joints might be hurting, but we're trying to forget about that or not talking about it kind of thing. And I think over time, the more comfortable you get with somebody, the more they are exposed to what it's like to live with this chronic illness. And now I've been dating and I've had my boyfriend watch me do my self injections. Uh, I tell him about all my doctor's appointment and everything. So I definitely didn't do that at the beginning. Um, because I didn't know how he would respond. But when they start asking you, "Well, how's your day?" and it's like, "Well, today is medication day. Today is doctor." Kind of thing. So,
Mhm.
yeah, they will eventually pick up on it.
Yeah. And it's now, for my husband and I, it's like it's a partnership, right? And it's something that we've both evolved in our understanding of. And we're trying to structure this episode as maybe a little bit like our normal ones, of like myths and facts. So there is a fact that's presented out there that we're kind of going to be like myth versus fact. Chronic illness always has a negative impact on a relationship. And that's a pretty generalized statement. I do want to acknowledge that chronic illness can absolutely have a detrimental effect, and there actually are some research studies. There was one from 2009 that when a woman is the patient in a relationship, assuming only one partner has a chronic illness, when the woman was the patient, the man was more obviously in hetero relationships, the man was more likely to leave them. 20% of the men left the woman after the woman got a diagnosis of chronic illness, whereas only 3% of women left a man after his chronic illness diagnosis. Interestingly, though, there are different statistics out there now, in the 15 years since that original study that's like often cited. But I think just from my experience personally with my different relationships and now my husband, and as well as seeing people in the support groups over the last 6 years, I think it's important to know that chronic illness can also bring you closer to your partner because it's a forced vulnerability. It's, learning how to ask for help and learning how to, and experiencing your partner being there for you when you need help due to your chronic illness, that can legitimately bring you closer. So I think, and not to sugarcoat it, I think they're both true. There are ways my relationship has been impacted negatively due to my chronic illness, and mostly it's like indirectly through the fact that I can't do all the things I wish I could do with my partner. And I think what frustrates both of us. But it also has brought us closer together. And I think, and that's can be a really beautiful thing. So, but what about you, Eileen? Has your, what are what's on the spectrum of their chronic illness having a positive versus a negative effect? What's been your experience on your relationship?
Well, I think the negative side is a huge mountain to kind of get over before you realize the positive. Particularly, there's how men respond to you when you are ill. I've had guys I was dating get kind of, mad at me when I couldn't do something because I was fatigued, or upset with me because I wasn't feeling well enough to be intimate. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but it does happen. And I've also experienced, negative emotions in myself where I have just kind of completely shut off on trying to communicate with somebody because I didn't want to deal with the rejection, the questions, the comments. I didn't want to, have to explain yet again, I'm chronically ill. So there have been times where I've realized it's like, okay, I need to step away from dating. I need to focus on myself. I need to focus on comfort and being alone because there's no guarantee that we're going to meet someone. It That's just the harsh reality. As many times as, our friends say, "Oh, I just know you're gonna meet Mr. Right," or things like that. Well, I have Mr. Right. His name is Big Man, and he's my 23-pound orange cat. I
He's amazing.
But he is. And I think, well, I should really focus on self-love, being comfortable with being alone because that I guess that is guaranteed. I am going to be with myself. So I think that was more important for me at times, was just reflecting on myself because dating can be exhausting, especially with a chronic illness and managing symptoms and work and personal life, and then the emotional toll that it can cause because it can be triggering. Meeting somebody who you don't really know can go horribly wrong. It could go well, you don't know. Obviously, you have to figure out, it's like taking our medications, you gotta take a chance.
If you have ever felt completely lost or utterly alone while trying to navigate real life with rheumatic disease, listen up. I am here for you. I created an educational program to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks, and it's called Room to Thrive. After earning a master's in occupational therapy and completing hundreds of hours of additional training, I created a step-by-step guide to help you truly thrive with rheumatic disease. This is the only program I know of that's designed to improve quality of life for people living with inflammatory, autoimmune forms of arthritis, like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, non-radiographic axial spondyloarthritis, Sjogren's disease, and more. During the self-paced lessons, you'll learn how to manage pain and fatigue, cope with stress, navigate relationships, and continue doing the things that matter to you and bring you joy. The goal is really to help you improve your quality of life and learn how to thrive with your rheumatic disease right now, rather than waiting for a distant day when it might be cured or healed. I really created the down-to-earth, practical, heartfelt resource I wish I had had when I was first diagnosed at age 20. If you want even more in-depth support, you can join the 12-week Room to Thrive virtual support group, where you'll be surrounded by people who actually get what you're going through, people who will provide the encouragement, validation, and support that you deserve. Each group is expertly moderated, so you don't have to worry about the kind of misinformation that spreads like wildfire in the free-for-all social media groups. If you're on the fence, don't just take my word for it. Here's what Katie had to say in March 2023. I was lost and overwhelmed with my RA diagnosis. It felt overwhelming to know what to read, what to do, how to spend my energy trying to research on the internet. Room to Thrive did that for me. It's been like getting a crash course in my diagnosis along with a community who gets it. To see all the details, including the dates for the next support groups, go to the link in the show notes or bit.ly/thrive room with a capital T and capital R. You can also just email me anytime at info@myarthritislife.net. And don't delay if you're interested, because each group is capped at 16 people or less in order to make a small, intimate group atmosphere. Thanks so much for your time, and I can't wait to get started with the next groups. And I can't wait for those of you who are interested in the self-paced option to go ahead and join that at any time. Bye-bye for now.
Yeah, I think that's the analogy that Dr. Stamatos uses that I love. It's like finding a good fit with a medicine is like dating, not a marriage. You try until, but I think try until you find the right one. And I think what the point you make is really poignant about the only thing we know for sure in life is that we will be with ourselves until we die. That is literally the only sure thing, regardless of chronic illness. Unfortunately, now being alive on this earth for 44 years, I've seen many cases where people, someone dies suddenly, they get in a car accident. Even if you found your perfect person, you never know. So, I mean, that you could look at that as a glass half full, glass half empty fact. And I think it's really, on the one hand, you could be, that's really scary. And it is scary. But on the other hand, you can say, okay, well then what's an investment? What am I going to get a full return on investment for? It's investing in your relationship to yourself and being able to be happy and comfortable being alone or being on your own in some ways in life. So I think that's a really poignant point. But I'll let you go to the next thing on our.
Yeah, it's absolutely important, because if you are not happy with yourself, and then your chances are you're not taking care of your chronic illness very well. I find, at least that's for myself. And yeah, there's no guarantee in life except for you have to find comfort in yourself. You have to find self-love. You have to find how to entertain yourself. Moving back to how narrow our world becomes after a chronic illness diagnosis. We're doing a lot less, maybe less friends around, kind of things like that. You have to learn to entertain yourself when we're stuck at home sick. So you also have to learn to love yourself. You have to learn to be alone. You have to learn to manage your disease alone. It's that oxygen mask analogy where you have to put your mask on first before you can help someone else. But it's also, you have to put your mask on first before you can let somebody else in my opinion.
I love that.
So yeah, and and when I do struggle to with dating apps, I would get messages from just men. I don't know if they were fake or not. Who knows? And at times I was depressed and I just ghosted them. I didn't respond because I either didn't have the energy, I was brain fog, so I didn't want to say something stupid. My anxiety or my depression was raging. So that's when I take a moment and say, I don't want to date right now. I need to take care of myself. So yeah.
Touche.
And now, did you have anything you wanted to respond to that before we move on to the next topic?
No, I think you said it beautifully. So for time's sake, we
Okay.
can move on. Yeah. I only have more to say in my head, but
Yes.
let's move on.
Yeah. So the next topic we're going to discuss obviously is a hot topic because it's about physical intimacy, sex, and arthritis. So does it affect our sex lives? Absolutely. In many ways, from pain, fatigue, to not wanting to be close to somebody because maybe you are going through side effects or you're immunocompromised and you don't want to get sick. Whatever reasons, there's so many different things that can get in the way of physical intimacy, sex, and arthritis. And physical intimacy, this necessarily isn't just sex. It's also cuddling, being close to someone, spending time with them, that kind of thing. There's many things that kind of get in the way because of arthritis, but there are also many ways to get around those. Personally, myself, I am a morning person. I have the most energy in the morning, so that's when I'm gonna have my most fun, let's just say, whether it be hiking or a romp in the sheets with my boyfriend. Or just also communication is so important. And it is so important to find a partner who is understanding. I'm going to tell a little story because here's another wild one about my dating experiences. I got a letter from BC Cancer telling me that I had abnormal cervical cancer screening cells, and That was the first time I've ever had anything like that, and I was freaked out, and I went to my then boyfriend, and I was in tears, and I was all scared, and I was going to him for comfort, and he was just kind of brushed it off, and then he literally asked me if I wanted to have sex then. And I was like, are you kidding me? You not know what I just brought up to you? And let me talk about red flags, because that's an absolute red flag in a relationship. If you are in any kind of distress and you're not feeling well for either physically or emotionally, and they're like, want to have sex? Unless that's how you cope, that's a red flag.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I actually had forgotten about this, but with a previous person I was dating, I also had an abnormal like pap smear result. And I didn't realize it until I was like, he was really taking it hard, like he was really upset. And then they did like a colposcopy and it was all clear, so it was like a false positive. But I figured out later through communication, which you might have heard, communication is important in a relationship. He thought it meant that I had cheated. And because we had, well, anyway, it wasn't like our first partners ever, but it was like close to it. So he was kind of like, I was like, oh my God, how could you ever think that of me? You know what I mean? But anyway, it's complicated. Let's just put it that way. Sorry.
Yeah, you cannot control how someone thinks.
Yeah.
That is
And
for sure.
was there anything more you wanted to say about that before I share my 2 cents?
No, I think as an occupational therapist, you are the best person to practical tips. I already said for me.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge, knowing your bodily rhythms. And actually, that leads me to my first point, which is like one of these like kind of unpopular opinion, but it's not only okay, it's a great idea to schedule physical intimacy or sex ahead of time. A lot of people think, oh, if I schedule it ahead of time with my partner, it's gonna like not be as exciting or whatever. But like, I think it's a great thing to do so that you can time it at the time of day. You can time your pain that works for your body, time your pain meds, time it to a part of the day that you're going to feel good. That's a huge, just little unpopular, societally unpopular idea. The second thing is that I wanted to refer you all to, I've done actually 4 previous Arthritis Life episodes on this topic. And one of them is with a queer, gay man, and one is with a queer woman. And I want to make sure to, say, we should have said up top, but that we're talking about hetero relationships, but there's also specific things that can happen in relation to those kinds of relationships too. But I also have a panel discussion with 5 women all talking about our experiences with sex and intimacy and arthritis. I really like, Eileen, that you said that was one of my big points. It's that it's not just about the physical, like penetrative sex. It's also about like a physical intimacy and emotional intimacy as well. It doesn't just mean penetration. It's about how do you relate to this person, and it's a positive spiral where if you have more emotional intimacy, usually then your physical intimacy is better too. And I think another thing is if everything leads back. I could tell you all the different traditional occupational therapy tips of try different positions and ergonomically, definitely play around with pillows and props so that you can be in the best, most comfortable position. But also, I really think for us individually, those of us with a chronic illness or chronic pain, it's a lot of us have internalized ableism or a negative belief about ourselves due to the fact that we have maybe some needs because of our chronic illness. And I think the more that you can do to combat that, to just name it and realize I am not less worthy of love because I have arthritis. I'm not less worthy of pleasure. I'm worthy of pleasure even though I have arthritis, quote unquote. I think that's probably one of the best things you can do for your relationship. And I just kind of carried, in my past relationships with regards to physical intimacy and my current one, I just carry myself with that confidence and to say that, yeah, I might have a couple of things that I need to do differently, but like that makes me no less lovable or worthy. And it's really, I joke, one of my friends point out to me, like all your exes are like either engineers or like scientists. So maybe they're all just very practical, knowing that and in a way that sometimes they get into it more because they're like, oh, let's change the angle 45 degrees or whatever, because they're like so sciencey. You know what I mean? So anyway, date nerds. That's really my big advice.
And my big advice is to not date guys in vans.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah. So you also have to make sure that your lifestyles are going to match up a little bit. For me, I used to have a thing for guys in heavy metal bands, but no more because the lifestyle is not for me. I love metal, but I prefer no crowds and peace and quiet now too. But also, reminding of something that I have heard from somebody before in dating, they said to me that made me really realize, I am more than my illness and I am human. I am deserving of love and affection and what comes my way, hopefully good. But they said to me when I was trying to explain to them that they were upsetting me and not understanding my symptoms or something. And he said to me that maybe I should just date somebody of my own kind. And I was just like, you mean somebody who's disabled? Or do you mean a human? Because I'm human. I'm not some separate entity of than what you are. I am a human. I live with something. And you can live with something, tomorrow.
That's
So,
wow.
yeah,
Sorry.
it's very important to listen to what somebody says to you. If you're telling your partner, intimacy, we're going a little bit back to intimacy here, but, you know, when you talk to somebody about how you're feeling, how they respond and how they treat you when you're not feeling well, to me is kind of a form of intimacy. It's that closeness and that partnership. I was blown away by my current boyfriend because he was the first boyfriend that said to me when I said I was about my CRP, inflammatory markers, and I told him about this. And instead of giving me unsolicited advice, he said, "Well, this is something that we can work on together."
Yeah, I love that.
And I was like blown away. I'm like, that's literally for the last 12, 13 years of being ill, what I've been always wanting somebody to say to me because I'm telling them about this and they're supposed to be my partner kind of thing. So yeah, it really definitely listen to what they say to you, but don't overthink it at the same time.
Well, and I think that leads nicely to our next topic, which is that there's no one right way to manage your romantic relationships when you have a chronic illness or inflammatory arthritis. There might be some wrong ways, as you've mentioned, some wrong patterns, but there are many different patterns that people can fall into. And again, we are going to integrate a tiny bit of evidence here. There's a research study in 2017 called Close Relationships and the Management of Chronic Illness Association and Interventions, which is about, and it ends up being about the different patterns that people fall into in relationships that can be helpful or unhelpful. And one's collaborative or shared responsibility where the partner and the patient work together, but the other one can be independent, where the person with the chronic illness wants to manage it independently. And there's not a right and there's not a wrong. So I'm like, I actually managed my illness at this point, now being together with my husband for, over 15 years. And, I'm pretty independent with it, but he knows that I call on him when I'm having a tough decision to make. Or, of course, like when we were engaging in conversations about pregnancy and stuff that affected, both of us. But your partner doesn't have to show up for you in a specific way that's outlined in a book. It just has to work for you. I know many people in the Room to Thrive support groups, they'll say that, their partner or their romantic partner will come with them to appointments and they love that. And that's a great source of comfort for them. So just know that there's no one size fits all. I would say if there's any advice I give anyone listening to this right now, if you wanted, the biggest piece of advice would be to read, if you're in a marriage or a long-term committed relationship, John Gottman has a book. He's he's a professor at the University of Washington. It's called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work, a practical guide from the country's foremost relationship expert. He and his wife both are psychologists who study relationships. And that book really helped me with all my relationships, not just marriage. It helped me with my, relationship with my son. It helped me with my friendships. And and I could talk about it for ad nauseum, but that is something that I would recommend. It helps you figure out these patterns that you might fall into. Like I realize I tend to be defensive. I don't tend to be contemptuous or critical, or I don't stonewall. I'm like not capable of stonewalling, which is where you're just like quiet. I'm like, what? How does that work? But you just don't engage. But I am defensive. And then my husband also realized he's defensive. And so we both know we can remind each other, okay, before having this conversation, let's talk about it without being defensive. You know what I mean? So that can be, and it also talks about some really counterintuitive points. Like the happiest couples aren't the ones that have the least amount of disagreements or arguments, are the ones that resolve them in a more harmonious way. So it's just really interesting. So anyway, that's a little pep talk, I guess, unsolicited pep talk of that there's not just one way. Is there anything you would want to share on that, Eileen?
I'm just going back a little bit to, the literature and what is out there is that I have seen many times when I have gone to sessions on difficult to treat rheumatoid arthritis, mental health support sessions at, the rheumatology conferences that we go to, is they often bring up that the people who do not have support and who are experiencing loneliness are the ones who are worser off. They have the poorer outcome. And I have personally felt that, especially in the winter. I don't know what it is. Even I can preach self-love. I can preach finding yourself and being happy being alone. There is still implications on your health. And there's also implications on your health if you're with the wrong person who makes you feel alone in another way. Maybe not the support that you need, or they're just not understanding of your chronic disease. They're mean about it. I've stepped away from dating guys because I found I just didn't like the way that they responded to me when I was not feeling well, or I told them about my illness kind of thing, right? So yeah, I just think it's, even though it's like a happy balance that you need to find in someone, but also find in yourself. So yeah, that's just, I guess, kind of one thing I wanted to bring up, because loneliness is deadly.
Yeah.
That has been proven by research. It's not good for the heart. It's not good for the mind. It's not good for how we kind of take care of ourselves. But sometimes also living with a chronic disease, it can be easier to be alone. So it's finding that balance. It's like everything we do, we have to pace ourselves.
Yeah. I just found, as you were talking, as you know, I'm always looking up stuff to give you everyone the latest and greatest. There was a study in 2024, association between loneliness, disease activity, and disease impact in inflammatory arthritis, a national cross-sectional study among more than 12,000 patients. And it said
That's a
out
lot.
of there, about 1/3 of patients with inflammatory arthritis have reported loneliness, and it was loneliness itself was independently associated with higher disease activity, more pain, greater fatigue, worse physical function. And so, and even those associations remained even when the researchers adjusted for depression, anxiety, comorbidities, age, education, sex, and living situation. So I think this is honestly, to me, that underscores just the importance of the work that, we're both doing with the support groups. We're, Room to Thrive and Arthritis Life, and then the work you're doing with IFAI Arthritis. It's just so, so important. So anyway,
Mhm.
well,
Yeah. And also going back to, we got to deal with the trauma of being alone in ourselves.
yeah. I really have been thinking about that a lot lately. Of no one, I actually, despite talking to hundreds of people with arthritis, I don't have any clue what someone else's pain actually feels like. I'll never know unless there's some increased technology what your Eileen pain feels like. Even though we both have rheumatoid arthritis, I won't know what your axial spondyloarthritis. I can imagine it based on my own pain, but
Mhm.
it really is your own solo experience. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, making friends with yourself. That's why self-compassion is so important. The definition of self-compassion is treating yourself the way you would treat a friend, a close friend, a close loved one. And that to me has been such a comfort over the years. But just for time's sake, we will wrap it up. So, actually I'll ask you, Eileen, first. So what is, in one sentence, what's the most important takeaway you'd like someone to take from this episode?
I think that for myself, if I were to give advice in one sentence, is you are worthy and you don't have to put up with BS.
Yeah, I feel like my takeaway has really evolved, especially as we've gotten to this deeper level. At first, I was going to be like, "There's no one right way to have a, good relationship with arthritis." But I think I would say, yeah, that you first, your romantic relationships are going to be better if you first have a good relationship with yourself and you see yourself as worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of happiness. That's the most important thing. And yeah, everything else stems from that. So I'm really glad that you're the one that recommended this topic, and I can't wait to hear from everyone else. Please contact us on social media or email to let us know what you think about this episode.
Yeah, and if you have any suggestions, we're always open. Or if you'd like us to dive more into a specific topic, we'd love to know that. Or we enjoy making these, of course. So thank you so much for joining us on another episode of Rumor Has It.
And don't forget to check out the full show notes on the Arthritis Life website. I believe, fixed the website issue I was having earlier this year, myarthritislife.net, for a full transcript plus video of our conversations.
And just a small reminder that you can email us if you want to tell us what you thought about this episode, comment on our social media accounts.
And thanks so much again. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. This podcast is supported by Room to Thrive, an educational program I created to help empower you to live life to the fullest with rheumatic disease. In the program, you're going to learn evidence-based tools for managing all the ways rheumatic disease affects your life. And my goal is to help you go from overwhelmed to confident, supported, and connected in a matter of weeks. You can go through the pre-recorded modules on your own in the self-paced course, or you can take the course along with a robust support group of new arthritis friends to support you and cheerlead you along the way. Learn more in the link in my show notes, or you can always go to www.myarthritislife.net. And if you like this podcast, I'd be so honored if you took the time to rate and review it. I also encourage you to share it with anyone you know who might benefit from it. I also want to remind you that you can find full transcripts, videos, and detailed show notes with hyperlinks for each episode on the Arthritis Life website, plus full episode videos on the Arthritis Life YouTube channel. If you have any ideas for content for future episodes, or you want to share your story on the podcast, please send me, Cheryl, an email at info@myarthritislife.net. I can't wait to hear from you, and thanks so much again for your time.